All right, welcome everyone to the Helm Developer Call, September 3rd, 2020. Back to school for most people, I think. Hopefully everything is going well for everybody. So, jumping in straight to announcements, we have a 3.3.1 release. I believe that was done to help out Cert Manager. Farina, maybe you have something to say about that?
There's a new release out. That's all I got. Yeah, it was up. I guess there was an issue in there. I don't remember which one it was that helped out. Was it Cert Manager, Bridget? Yeah. So we cut it quickly to get them out, even though we could probably have waited a little longer.
So the Cert Manager people were happy. Any other announcements anybody wants to make? All right, let's get on to discussion. Big one here. I don't know if Scott's around, but Farina, you're also listed. Delisting the stable and incubator from Helm Hub.
Yeah, so we'd originally set up a timeline of delisting the stable and incubator repositories on Helm Hub to push people to get them into their own repositories if they hadn't already. We still have, as you'll see listed there, there's a whole bunch of charts that have not found new homes yet. And so the question is, we already said we were going to move it, but we haven't yet removed it, but we haven't yet. And so do we or don't we? That's what he wanted to have. That was the original plan. And I'm curious what input people have, because you don't want to wait until the last second before it's deprecated to remove it. But we're running out of time here. So did anybody have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I've just one thought in it because it came in, I'm not sure how I got involved in it, but I'm not really involved in it, but the Prometheus chart came in and there were some questions around where it was going to go and what was going to happen with it. So at the moment, Scott, he's working on that. He's working with the community over there. And that's a big community with a lot of input from a lot of people. And he's trying to get that chart out there. He's taken on board and brought it across. So the only feedback I want to give them this is some of these charts are super important to people. They're super important where they're going to be. And there is a certain level of trepidation. Is there going to be suddenly, you know, they go to bed one night, they wake up in the morning and, you know, they don't have the chart anymore or whatever. So one thing I'd say on that is that these charts continue on and that there could be really important charts in there and what's going to happen with them going forward.
So I do think it's important to remind everybody that November 13th, I bet you on that day, the buckets will be garbage collected and no longer available. Okay. And I think that's an important thing.
Are you serious about actual garbage collection that day or just could be?
So the word could be is the more accurate. Given the amount of traffic and the amount of cost to Google, I'm going to guess it is likely that day. We have an issue open on the community repository about trying to figure out how to move that elsewhere, which is not a simple dance. And yeah, they're looking to offload it. So I'm going to guess November 13th, it's gone. And maybe one of the things that would be useful is a tool that took all the charts from one repository, all the versions of it, and allowed you to download them and copy them to another location and generate an index file. That may actually be a useful thing to grab the history for a particular chart. I don't know, but that's my guess. Is November 13th. And we've known about this. It's been talked about it, but now it's like for real because it's coming soon.
What do we do if some of the important charts like Prometheus that Martin mentions are not relocated yet?
Come up with a plan. We probably need to really buckle down and start the move on some of these. Without question, some of them, we've just got to get a good plan in place to do that. And maybe that's what I'll start doing Tuesday, because Monday's a holiday, at least here in the States, to start tracking down and helping tracking down. But I think we do need a definite plan. Like things like Docker registry. That's kind of an important one. I'd like to see somewhere else. And maybe there's some people or some organizations that would want to pick it up. JFrog has volunteered on some things. And JFrog, with their cache, and I'm forgetting the name of it, Chart Center, is actually going to have a cache of these. So anything that's been pulled through that they have an immutable cache, and it's going to continue to be in there, they've said, even once the thing goes away.
Yeah, I think they made a good point as well too, Matt, that, you know, someday their chat center mightn't be there. So yeah,
oh, totally.
It's a funny one because, like, really, charts are the essence, I suppose, of Helm. It's where, you know, the value is in a lot of it. So, you know, as I think Mark makes a good point here, like, you know, will ones fall through the cracks. So yeah, I suppose it's strange because, as you say, the whole idea of this is they're not maintainable in their current format, and that people need to host them. So yeah,
this changed up the maintainer, but it's also certain part of that relationship. Now, if people have ideas of another model, or maybe they want to adopt another place that hosts a bunch of these, I think it's a really important, good thing to talk about. Even if a bunch of chart maintainers wanted to get together to figure out a new way to do this, let's totally talk about it. The stable and incubator repositories in their current form, it's a problem. But if we wanted to re-envision this, let's do it. Let's talk about it. If somebody wants to have a one-off meeting, something like that, let's go for it. I see the problem. I don't have a good answer.
Can the chart center actually be our temporary backup?
Unless somebody wants to just grab the whole darn thing and do a backup of the container. I mean, you can grab the index file to know everything you got to pull down and just pull it down.
No, what I mean is, let's say that the stable repository does go away, and then we're in a panic, and people say, "What do I do? How do I get, you know, whatever, Prometheus, Grafana, whatever?" Chart Center will have it, so they're saving us, I think, in a way.
Yeah, they are.
It's not like the source code is going away either. It's just that the GitHub repository is being archived, so they can just as easily clone the repository and get the source that way as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're deleting complete history here. There are
Correct,
alternative ways for people to migrate forward. It's just a matter of figuring out how do we keep on supporting this in the future, or not in this case.
Yeah. Adding.
All right. Do you want to continue discussing this, or should we move on?
Let me ask this: what should be our next step with this?
Have we reached out to the maintainers of those larger charts that we know that people are like heavily dependent on, but nobody has taken ownership of, or at least reached out to the vendors, like say the Prometheus operator or whoever's maintaining those charts? Have they found new owners?
I don't know. So, yeah.
I guess the question is that our responsibility as chart maintainers? And that's probably a good question to bring back to the chart maintainers team and see what their opinion is on that one. But I'm wondering, how do we reconcile that if nobody is interested in taking on ownership? And if we just drop that, then someone either is going to take up ownership, or it's just no one's interested in it, or they find workarounds. So I don't know. I really don't know the answer to this one correctly. I think the problem is that I don't have any like reserved ownership over the Prometheus charts or things like that. So I don't really have an invested opinion on where it should go.
Isn't part of the point that we are moving away from centralized ownership?
Mm-hmm. That's what Scott is doing, the good work he's doing with the Prometheus. He's trying to set that up. So, yeah.
And the issue he has is tracking things moving, like Grafana and Graphite, GitLab, Ghost. There's a bunch of these that are moving away, and he actually has a checklist as things move away. And so that's where some of it's going to end up being. Some of them I'm not sure. Like there's a Hubot one, and some of these I don't know what's going to happen.
I think this is the one where, you got servers in the lab and no one put labels on the servers. So you just shut them all down one Friday evening. And then when the emails come in, you go, oh yeah, that was that server, yeah. So that's kind of,
yeah.
So you'll find out charts that nobody even knew they existed. And been used.
So after this call, I can send something out to the mailing list with a reminder of dates and what's going on, and a link to this issue, and start asking people to migrate their stuff, along with pointing people to what's happening with Artifact Hub, just so they can list it. I'll do something to the mailing list after this. But I'm not sure, and I think we should talk about it again next week.
We should probably
Maybe
leave it
Wednesday.
on the agenda as long as it's not resolved. All right, so important discussion. Now we go to the HIP proposal, which is the proposal about how to do Helm proposals. We settle that so that we can, well, Bridget put it on
Oh, yeah, I asked about this. It's more of a Fisher question, which is Fisher has a proposal. It looks mostly done. I am sitting there waiting for it to be something that is actually merged so that I can go to a bunch of old issues and be like, open a proposal if you want, resolve. So yeah, where are we with getting this as done as we're going to get it? What do you think, Fisher?
So we're kind of basically at the point where the proposal itself is pretty much ready and done. I think I've gone through enough of a couple of rounds of reviews to figure out if there are gaps or if there are concerns and questions in there. So I think at this point it's just a matter of getting enough quorum from org maintainers to figure out if this is the right approach that we want to move forward with. And by that meaning PR review and approval. So I think that's a little bit more difficult because a bunch of the org maintainers are away on vacation right now. I know Adam and Butcher are currently on vacation, but I think it would be good to get some kind of quorum or census on that to make sure that it's not too heavy-handed and it's a good progress or a good process to move forward with. So,
can I ask you to take an item, since it's yours and you've been owning this, to email the cartographers, the org maintainers, and just ask everybody to go review this process?
yeah, for sure. That's actually a fantastic call to action here. So yeah, I can send an email to the cartographers list after this to ask for any final remarks.
All right, thank you. Next item is Dependabot. I put that on, but it was really Fisher who kind of dealt with somebody bringing up the issue. I felt that it was something you wanted feedback on before approval.
Oh, that one. I think that one is good. The only concern with Dependabot in some cases is if it releases, like I've seen some cases where Dependabot will automatically create a pull request for a security issue, and that will make it immediately public. Sometimes, well, I've always liked the approach of Dependabot when it comes to sending a private email to like administrators list to say that there are security issues or things that you might want to bump your dependencies, which is a good idea. And general minor dependency bumps are always a good idea to keep that up to date. But in a couple of cases with Dependabot, I've found that a major NPM bug or a major NPM package will come out with a CVE, and then Dependabot will go and update every single project that relies on that NPM package. And that kind of is good, but at the same point, it makes visible which projects are exposed or vulnerable to certain security vulnerabilities. That's maybe one concern, but that's also a counterpoint. And Farina, you want to bring up a point?
Yeah, so it just hit me. So the Docker packages we use right now have CVEs in them. It's in code that we don't use, all right, or the Docker modules, I should say. They're in packages in those modules we don't use. They have to do with runtime of container stuff. And we don't do runtime of container stuff. We do other things with those packages. And so we've been let know that there's open CVEs with those, but so far nobody's found any impact, even though analysis has been performed. But we rely on a project called Oros, which uses these things in this way. We don't tend to rely on Docker, except in one small case around authentication. And Oros hasn't updated yet. Now there's CVEs in those. So is Dependabot going to want to go update all these things? And if so, what's the impact if OAuth hasn't updated yet, right? And this is around security. And so what's going to happen in those kinds of situations, I wonder.
At least the Dependabots installs I've seen in the past, it's not like they go and auto patch your code. It's that they
No.
send a public pull request and or issue.
Yeah.
But then those would be sitting there and we would have to close them.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you close that, will the Dependabot come right around again, or can you tell the Dependabot that we don't want those updates done?
I don't see, and this is like, I haven't done a double blind study or anything, but I've definitely seen on other repos, it opens a thing, you just close it going no, and it doesn't open it again. And at least it doesn't open it every week or anything. Maybe it'll tell you eventually again, but like, it's kind of more of a, just send it for this particular rev. And then if you ignore it, it'll send it next time there's a rev, as I've, in my experience, non-scientific study.
So here's something we can do. If it becomes a problem, we just turn it off, right? It's not like we're owning it forever.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm not too like concerned about the CVE things. I thought I'd bring that up as like a potential issue if that is an issue in terms of like our security thing. But at the same point, I'm like more than happy to go through like a trial run. Like it's not going to be a major impact. It's not going to automatically rewrite code in the repository. It just submits pull requests in an automated fashion. So if it can do that, and if it can do that reliably, I would love to see like Kubernetes version updates to be done in an automated fashion. So then that takes a huge chunk of load off of Atom. I don't know
Can they
if
do
that'll
that
happen.
automatically?
I don't know
Too
if they
many
could do that
API changes.
in a minor release, probably not. But like a patch change, like 1.18 to 1.18.4 or 1.18.6 or whatever is being released, I think those ones can be done in a usually a backwards compatible fashion. Usually. So.
Okay, then we're good.
Do you guys want to go ahead with it, or you want to discuss it with more maintainers around?
I think there's enough maintainers here to bring that around, and if there is further issues or discussions about it, then we can have another discussion about that later or on the mailing list.
All right, so let's give it a try. Okay, next topic is from Farina about application versions as container flags.
Yeah. So it hit me that the Kubernetes version is trying to get to your version of things, but there's a difference between the packaging something is in and the version of the application it's running, right? And I think that's an important difference. And if you look at something like WordPress, right? WordPress might be packaged and tagged in a container that says, PHP 7 Apache. That's not your version of WordPress. And yet the intent of the annotation for version, the app.kubernetes.io /version annotation, is to get at the application version, not the container tag version. And I know something was recently merged that said if there is no app version set, then set it as the tag version. And for me, I'm looking at the separation of concerns and saying, is this a good idea? We've kind of intentionally strayed away from it to say, no, we shouldn't do it because it's not telling, there's lots of cases where it's not going to actually tell you the real version, right? And so I figured it was worth having a conversation on because something was merged, and yet the previous, and this even gets to our total lack of communication on these things and not having talked it out recently. So I thought it would be worth bringing up.
So are you saying that it would be better to have an empty app version than one that would reuse the container tag when most, well, maybe not most, a certain number of them would not be valid?
When assert, not to have an empty version, to have no annotation at all is the thing. It's not to have it as empty. It's just not even to have the annotation on there.
In the chart, this for the chart.
Yeah.
Oops, there goes Martin on his probably unmuting.
Clicking the wrong button. I've done that. He's like, I'm going to unmute myself. And then he really muted himself, even left. And I was curious to what he had to say on it. Did anybody else have any thoughts on this? While we wait for Martin to come back.
I did. I would like Martin to come back because I know that.
While we
he
wait
was-
for Martin, I have a quick question. I'm just going to interrupt you, Fisher, so you don't waste your words with Martin not here. But like, for the notes, quick question. Are we saying we might need to revert that PR? Like,
Maybe.
okay.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Alright.
worth a discussion.
Okay.
While we're waiting for Martin to come back, maybe we can move on to another topic and then
Oh,
come
sure.
back if you.
I put the topic in because Farina had a bunch of ideas around where we should put the images, and we have been going back and forth. And the GitHub Container Registry blog post came out, and it made it look like maybe it would be a slightly better home for images? Question mark. So I'm just wondering if, and we talked about that a little on Keybase, and I wanted to know if people had more thoughts about that.
Yeah, I like the idea. Has anybody tested can anonymous polls and all of that really work right now? And do we have access to it because it's a beta feature?
I haven't tested anything.
I've tested it on our personal account and on the Deus Labs account, and we have beta access on there. I'm fairly certain that we could probably get, let's go actually into the Helm project, into packages.
We do.
There
Is
is
it available to everybody who has packages?
It is available to everyone who has packages. Actually, I'll just share the link here on Slack, or I mean on Zoom. And that is for the Helm project. So as long as you have a GitHub token from the Helm project itself, as in you can get read access to the API, you should be able to go onto the, you should be able to, as I understand it, you need your own personal GitHub access token that authenticates as yourself.
Yeah.
And then it looks like the / organization that you traditionally see in Docker registries, that is also related to your GitHub organization. So it'd be like docker.package.github.com/helm/ whatever your package is. So as long as you do a proper Docker login to GitHub Container Registry, which looks like a global login, then you can just do a push to /helm.
Yeah. So here's what I can do because it's in beta. I have a script somewhere, I think, that let me migrate everything. And I'll see whether I can go migrate everything we have today that's pushed over here and see if it works. And I can try to do that before meeting next Thursday.
Yeah, this might also be a good conversation to bring back up with the CNCF because they're in control of like infrastructure and billing costs and all that. And I'm aware GitHub Container Registry is free currently in beta, but that might not always be free. And at that point, then we have to bring in the CNCF for billing and for figuring out who's going to pay the bills.
And we're not the only project doing this. Yeah.
As I read, at least I was reading this last night because Ivan was asking some stuff about it last night, and it looked like they don't plan in the near term to start charging for public. Like private is free during beta, but probably won't stay free. And I don't think public is going to be charged right in the current time frame.
Yeah.
I mean, the future is always unknown, of course.
In some places, though, there are limits on things. Like if you go to GitHub pages, there's actually a bandwidth limit per month or something like this that you can use, and it's buried in the doc somewhere. And so I would want to make sure that we don't end up hitting one of those limits as well. I didn't see anything in the early docs, but it's all early pre-beta stuff. So we can bring this up with the CNCF, and because they've got to deal with this across a bunch of projects to see if there's something that they might want already be looking at there. And I can take the action to bring it up with them.
So before we get back to, now that Martin's back, before we get back to that issue we're discussing, let's just go through a moderator and notes and for next week.
I will be on vacation next week and can volunteer for nothing because I will be in a cabin with questionable internet.
I can do moderator again if nobody else wants it.
I may or may not be here. Otherwise, I would.
I can volunteer for notes.
Okay.
Nobody for triage. We don't do triage this week.
I won't be working every day. Otherwise, I would. I can help on the days that I'm around.
The Canadian can happily do triage this week. I'm gonna be away for Labor Day like everyone else, because we have a Labor Day as well in Canada at the same time. But I'll be here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Okay.
I can help as well on that.
All right, thank you, everybody. Let's go back to the container tag, Farina.
Okay,
Yeah. So go ahead, Martin. I was just going to actually ask you.
I
So
was
go ahead
actually
with your thought.
I was actually talking and my Mac just died in midair. Anyway, I agree with what Farina was saying, because I was deliberating with it at the time, and I put in the changes a while back where we went with the app name and the whole lot, and we moved it from the image tag. But when I was reviewing it, somehow I just got conflicting ideas in my head. So I went with the idea, yeah, maybe put it in with the image tag. But I agree totally what Farina says around the idea here that it may not be the same as the image as the app. So yeah, revert it back is probably I would think is the best option.
Okay. I can take the action to do the reverting pull request.
Well, I'll do it, seeing that I merged it in the first place. If
You'll
if
do
you
it?
want,
Okay.
I don't mind. Yeah, I can do
Oh,
it.
okay. And if you hit me up afterwards, I'll review it.
Yeah, sure. There's no rush. I'll have it done anyway sometime over the week. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, thank you. With 2 minutes left, we have one last item from Martin.
Yeah, this is a sticky wicket, as they say in cricket terms. This is the one, and it's as far since I've come on the project, I've seen something around somebody has wanted to template the values file. So the person here has put in a huge PR, and someone suggested to him lately to break it up. So now he's broken it up into 3 separate PRs. I suppose the big question I have here is, and people with more experience here what is our opinion on this? Do we want to allow templating on values files into the code, I suppose? Because I suppose if we don't, maybe we need to tell the person that's putting the work in this now, as opposed to start putting any more work into the particular area.
So the main issue when we first talked about this before was kind of figuring out at what point do we want to, so there's an issue of cyclic dependencies here between when we're trying to figure out where is the stopping point of Helm and where does a package manager start and where does other assistive tools kind of come into play to help out in these situations. When you bring in templating into a values.yaml file, the root one, which was kind of like the original proposal, that was way back then. It was a Helm package. Can you add templates into a values file and then retemplate and render it before passing it on to the rendering engine? You get into that problem where you have a little bit of a cyclomatic dependency where you need to render the values before passing it into the chart and then merging all those values and then re-rendering again. And so you're kind of running into this, like, I need to render to render to render. And it's like, where does it stop? So that was where we were kind of arguing in the original case, where that's where a preprocessor kind of comes in and where it becomes really, if you're wanting to template your values or pull your values from external sources, perhaps that's a better case for an external tool to do, to fetch those values or to generate that values file for you and pass those into Helm. And then we can do rendering once and then spit those templates out and submit that to Kubernetes. So that was the main concern that we had originally.
Yeah, I do want to add, there's a point of separation of concerns going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Who's concerned with what things? And then I looked at that pull request and I thought to myself, what is the reason? What is the use case? How does it fit into workflows? And I actually immediately came to, because there's so much context, and we've had this conversation repeatedly, quite frankly, this is a great thing for a Helm improvement, a HIP, a HIP that we talked about earlier. This would be what we'd want there, because it's not just do it, the why, the how, the where it fits in, dealing with the concerns. So the values file is the interface to a chart. And we added JSON schema in to give you a schema with validation you can generate UIs on. Now, if we go and add templating in, what does that mean to your schema handling and your validation work, right? There's a bunch of little pieces that fit together. We're not gonna be able to talk through in this call because we're already over time, that need to be worked out. And the reason and the thinking through of why and how do you separate concerns, that all needs to be worked out. And so I think this is one of those things that needs a HIP, and we need to politely pause on this to deal with the why and how does it fit in with everything else architecturally before we move into the doing the work. Because I have reservations in being able to make it all work together smoothly while dealing with security and interfaces and everybody else's concerns.
Okay, so my one thing in is that I suppose we need to give that feedback to the person who's raised this PR, and give it to them, I suppose, ASAP, because the PR has been sitting there for a long while, and now someone in the community has told them to break it into 3 separate PRs, which the person has done. So I'd imagine they've put in quite a bit of time on it, so they probably need to, you know, get some feedback, as you've mentioned, to maybe direct them towards the HIP, as you say, because, and to break it down from the context.
So can anybody take that action?
I'd be happy to. I've already kind of engaged and had a conversation with him, so I can ask if we can pause here and we can have a conversation, because that was, I should have started out with that before instead of saying there's a lot of code and we need to review it. I think it's more of we need to stop, pause, and think about the use cases rather than just in a one-line comment or in a one comment thing. So I can take that
Okay,
action.
thank you. We're 5 minutes past. Just a quick, anybody has anything else, or should we call it a day?
I think we're good. Don't forget to record next week while I'm out.
Thank you. All right, nice to see everybody. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care, bye.